everybody. Welcome to another episode of Tell Me Everything. Today, I'm so excited. I am joined by the one and only Hannah Neese. She is a director. She is an actor. She is a mother. She's an activist. And she is one of my favorite people. And I wanted to have her on the show and just talk about a lot of things that I'm genuinely interested in, but I know that people listening would be interested in, such as being a mother, being an artist, being an activist, trying to figure out all those things, and doing them all at the same time. So yeah, I'm just gonna pick your brain. And doesn't she look so beautiful today?
Oh my gosh, you're like gassing me up so much. You're listing all these cool things. You make me sound so awesome. Hang out with you every day.
Well, they're all true. The only thing I couldn't remember is I remember you directing a few things. Did you write? I thought you wrote something.
I have not yet.
Oh, okay.
I have not been brave enough to move into the world of writing yet, but I have directed and I have acted.
Okay, that's what I thought, and we'll get into that because I'm very interested in like the differences between that. But I guess the first thing that I'm interested to know, for everyone listening, I've known Hannah for quite some time now, several years, and we always have the best life chats. But I don't think I've ever really gotten my favorite question to ask artists is, when did you start? When did you had this notion that you wanted to be an actor or performer? Was there like a special spark that happened when you were a kid? Did you see something? Were you introduced to something? I always love to ask people that.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So for me, my family will tell you this. I like almost from the moment I was born, like from 3-4 years old, insisted that I was going to be an actress. I was going to be a movie star, and that just like got it in my head. And as far back as I can remember, I think it came from just being a people pleaser and loving to entertain and loving to make people laugh. I remember being really little and realizing that if I got up and I was telling jokes or I was being silly, that my family would laugh. And I liked being able to do that. I liked being able to make people happy and to make people feel things. So it just sort of stuck with that over the years. Even when I would, there was like a period of time where I thought maybe I want to be a teacher, which I did end up finding a way to do as well. But I always, yeah. But I would always sort of bounce back and forth and come back to acting. And then I remember, I think it was maybe 4th grade, and I, spent all those years insisting that I wanted to be an actor, but I really had no idea about what it took or any exposure to it, or no exposure even to theater, really. It was just watching movies and TV. And we took a field trip, my 4th grade class, to see The Sound of Music live on stage, like a community theater production. And I just remember walking in and being in the theater, and I was like, this is where I want to be for the rest of my life. This is where I want to work. This is the best feeling. It's so beautiful. Like, look at this audience. And so I was just, from that moment on, I was like, I want to be on stage. I want to do this in this place. And that's sort of how I began to move into theater. And so those were really my sparks, were seeing how great it felt to entertain people and to make them feel, and then just seeing the magic of live theater and being in that room. There's no feeling like it to me.
Yeah, for sure. I remember, I always tell people this, when I was a kid, my first exposure to like live entertainment was, I used to play music. I was in classes for piano and violin. Mm-hmm. And one of the first things I did was play in the orchestra pit for, what was it? Is the Christmas, oh my gosh, my brain's not working. The Christmas show, the ballet, the Nutcracker. And
okay,
yeah, and then like seeing that on stage and having the same exact reaction of like, oh my gosh, people do this for a living? Like this is a grown-up job? Where do I go? How do I find this out? So that's incredible. And then I guess my next question would be, so you have this amazing spark, you have this interest, and then how do you get from there to getting into undergrad for theater? Because I know you went to Wayne State University.
I did.
And now, correct me if I'm wrong, you got a performance degree like for acting, or was it?
Yeah, so it is, I think the way it's written out is it's a BFA in theater with a concentration in acting. so that's how they differentiate. So I was in all of the performance-based class, but they did have a bachelor of fine arts in theater for technicians as well. So mine is the concentration in acting, is how they say it.
I like it. So walk me through, so you are in Wayne State University. Walk me through the audition process for that. Walk me through, how did you find Wayne State? Like all of that good stuff.
Yeah, so when I started, the program looks, I think, drastically different now than it did when I was first applying in probably applied in 2011, started 2012. But so it really just kind of came on my radar because my family was going through, I'm gonna get very like real for a second. So my family was going through some difficult stuff. I was kind of, my mom and I were kind of short on money. And she was going through some health stuff, some addiction stuff. And so it got to the point where all of that was going on and everything was so chaotic that I really just wasn't even thinking about college my senior year of high school. I had so many other things going on that it wasn't important. And I was like, I don't have the money for, the Common App and things like that. And it hit Halloween. And my counselor called me in and was like, you have not applied for any colleges and you are, a straight A student. Like you have to go to college.
Yeah.
You need to start applying. Like the deadlines are coming up soon. You're going to miss your chance. And she's like, you have to be in college. So I went home that night and I just started looking at all of the colleges in Michigan that had theater programs that didn't need the Common App, because I was like, I can't swing that $75. And so Wayne State was one of half a dozen maybe that you could just apply to. And so, I was shooting my shot with all of these different places, Western and Eastern and Central and everywhere. And then as I started touring the colleges and meeting people and looking at their programs, I just really, really fell in love with everything that Wayne State had to offer. I fell in love with the gorgeous Bonsall Theater and the chance, the idea of getting to work there. And when I started, they had 4 shows at the Bonsall. They had a full studio season. They had a PhD directed program. They had the Heck Robbie Festival that was all student written and directed and put together theater festivals. So there were tons and tons of opportunities, which was really exciting, for a freshman, especially, my only exposure at this point to acting had been doing high school plays. So to get to see all of these amazing chances to work with different people and to be involved in one sense or another was amazing. Just the vibrancy of the art scene in Detroit and getting to work in the city was really exciting, because I know I grew up, everyone around me sort of thought Detroit was really scary, right? Like we only heard the bad things about it. And then getting to go there and see the art scene, I was like, no, it's great. Like it's vibrant. It's coming up. The people here are amazing. It's a great community once you really let yourself get in there and see the good. And so that just sort of like, I also saw Hairspray they, took us on the tour of campus and we got to see one of the shows. And so I got to see Hairspray at the Bonsall. And wow. I have to be part of this. I can't sing or dance at all, but like, I still don't care. I want to be in it, so be part of it. And so I applied for, at the time they did, your first 2 years would be a general BA, and then at the end of your sophomore year, you got to audition for the BFA program. Okay. So my first 2 years, that was how it went. I applied and got in and was just taking the general theater classes and learning everything I could. And at the end of my sophomore year, they had the auditions for any performers that wanted to get into the performance BFA programs. And that's when I had to go and, in front of a panel of my professors and others and have the formal audition to see if I would make it. And luckily I did make it. And so I got to have the more, not advanced, but more in-depth performance classes for the Bachelor of Fine Arts going on. So
tell me everything about that audition. I want to know everything. I want to know everything.
Oh my gosh. I feel like so much of it out of my mind because I was so nervous at the time.
What were the requirements?
It was 2 monologues. I think you had to do 2 monologues and then like an application that you had to fill out with some essays and things like that about your work ethic and what your plans were for the future and things like that. And so it actually was like a very lovely process, because of course it's my professors that I've already had for
That you
class.
were,
So
comfortable with.
that took a little bit of the nerves away. I was sitting there with like, but it's still nerve wracking though, because there's brilliant people like Lavinia Hart and Cheryl Tursky that are sitting there, and I'm like, I know you guys know me, and I'm pretty sure you like me, but that still doesn't mean that I'm good enough to make it.
Right. And I'm here
Um,
like presenting myself for your approval, like.
yeah, right. Being like, well, if you had any thoughts and feelings, now is your chance to really let me know. But it was one of those processes where I think I made it out to be worse than like a huge thing in my mind, and really they were like very lovely and encouraging, and wanted everybody to do their best and to get in. I mean, they had taught us up to that point. They were hoping that we would
Yeah.
fly out of the nest.
Fly with your wings.
Yeah.
What so you get into the end stage of that program, you graduate. Now, what I'm always interested to hear people talk about their transition from undergrad to either grad school or into the professional world. And I know where I actually met you was shortly after you graduated. I think you
Yeah.
had graduated, or were you still in?
I think when we first met, I was about to go into my senior year.
Okay, yeah, because
Yeah,
we were, well, then you can talk a little bit about that too, because then you would technically have been working for a professional company even before you graduated.
that is true.
'Cause I know that's what we met doing, productions for Uncovered Theater, which is a professional theater in Rochester, Michigan.
Yeah.
So I love to ask people, how was that transition, both being in school still and working professionally, and then after graduating and then working professionally after graduation? And like, I always find it fascinating to hear different stories, because I think that when you're in grad school or when you're in undergrad, you still have this kind of like support system, like reminding you of the tactics, reminding you of like the everyday exercises, things you're doing as an artist and a performer. And then when you're out on your own in the professional world, I know for me, I struggled a little bit, because you suddenly are only responsible for yourself, and you don't have
Yeah.
those constant reminders. So how was that?
Yeah. That is a great question. It was, I definitely felt a lot of that in the difference between working on a professional show when I was still in undergrad, and at the time too, our junior year at Wayne State focused heavily on Shakespeare work. So I was really lucky that I was auditioning and working on this outdoor, Shakespeare festival right after I had just had really brilliant Shakespearean actors teaching me in my acting and voice classes,
Yeah.
how you scan things, and how you're supposed to act, and all of the notes, and why it's important to look at first folio and things like that. So I had all of that fresh in my mind, which I think went a long way towards me, getting the role and then being able to be anywhere close to decent at it, because it was my very first, professional show. So I'm up there with actors that have been doing it for quite a while.
Yeah.
And so that was really helpful, is having all of that fresh in my mind versus, especially now that I've been out of undergrad for a little bit, having to really sit down at the beginning of any table work and go, okay, what did I learn? What are the steps that I'm still supposed to do? And like you said, being out on your own and having to build your own process and really look at what worked, and even stuff. I even find myself going back to things that I didn't really like in undergrad or didn't really use a lot in undergrad, just because sometimes you have to throw every dart at the dartboard to see what works. But that was very wild for me, is being responsible for coming up with my own like artistic process for each show, and having to really sort of put your money where your mouth is, and okay, I did all of these years of schooling, and now I have to remember and apply all of it by myself with no one there to tell you what's right or wrong anymore.
Right.
I mean, nothing there is a right or wrong really when it comes to it, but you feel that way as a young student. You're looking for that approval and for that validation that you followed the process correctly, or you did everything that you could. And so that, I think, was probably the trickiest thing for me, is learning to trust myself and my instincts and my process, and to learn that I had a great guest teacher who said this. There is no perfect, there is only right. So
Yeah,
there's no, it's it's right if it's good, if it works for you.
right.
There's a million different ways to be right.
No, I'm so glad you said that, especially for people listening who are in the artistic field or thinking about going into the artistic field. That is a huge, huge reminder, because even for me, I have to think about that, where you book a job or you get something and you're in the middle of doing it, and I feel like as artists we are already so inclined to be in touch with our emotions, good or bad, that it's
Hmm.
like those can be consuming.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're thinking of like, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to do this? What am I doing? I'm like, and you can go from like the high of booking a job and being on top of the world and being like, yes, I own this, I deserve this, da da da, to literally like an hour later being like, what have I done? I'm not going to do this well, and like da da da, freaking out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's
exactly. I mean, we're very needy creatures. Like
yes.
we crave that validation. And it does get really hard to do it for yourself, especially when, like you said, you're not booking jobs, or you look around at other people your age or slightly older or slightly younger, and they're in a different place than you, and it makes you feel like you're supposed to be where they are. You've done something wrong. And so I think that's probably almost the most important part of your artistic process, is being able to look at where you are and what you've done and be focused on, did I do everything I can do with where I am right now? Have I done the best that I can do? And maybe tomorrow I'll be able to do more and I'll do better, but did I do the best I can today? And
Yeah.
having to be okay with where you are, and to sort of have to learn to validate yourself as an artist, and to be proud of it even when you didn't get the job, and to be proud of the career that you have even if you aren't making $1 million or you're not in the city that you want to be at yet. I had those breakdowns like we were talking about right after graduating. So I was like, I'm not booking everything solid. I'm not working all year long. And my family and friends had to be like, yeah, but it doesn't happen like that. You don't just start booking, 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 booking overnight. It doesn't happen for anybody that way.
Right.
And you have to not feel like a failure when the phone isn't ringing. You have to find a way to still trust yourself and still be doing work even when no one's asking you to do work.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's huge, because I think that spoke to me too. Because when I book something or when I'm working on something, the trend, especially now, with Instagram and with like a lot of social media, is that there's this notion you're always being fed and you're always seeing the best of the best, and
Yes.
that is so hard sometimes, because what subconsciously sometimes what it tells you is that like you have to get something, and as soon as you start something it has to be performance ready. And I've
Mhm.
struggled with that a lot, and like the last couple months my mantra has been like, do the work and let it be exactly what you said. Let it be what it's going to be. If you can go to bed at night and tell yourself I did everything within my power to make this good, then you're good. But my philosophy sometimes has been to like grab a project, work on it until I can get it up on its feet, and then like think it's ready to go, and be so frustrated that I'm like, why is this not working? And it's like, oh, because I haven't put the time into it. I just
Right.
want it to be like uploaded and ready to go and performance ready and da da da. And it's this idea that it's like you have to be okay with the process and the time, and with
Yeah.
just working really hard, because the audience comes at the end, and that
Mhm.
like that response of like a good job or respect from critics or anything like that comes from all the work you do behind closed doors. Like no one's watching you
Yeah.
do the work. So that's
Exactly.
something, yeah, that's something I have to remind myself of all the time. But I think that's a perfect segue into, you talked about relying on your own artistic process and coming up with the things that work for you and pulling from like things that you learned in college. How do you feel like your process changes from different venues? We met and you were doing the outdoor Shakespeare festival. I know
Mhm.
you said you were doing stuff at the Bonnestell Theater. I know you've done other festivals. You've done other theaters in Michigan, indoor, outdoor. And how does that process change for you? And then especially after you became a mother, and even while you were pregnant and
Mhm. Um, yeah, so from venue to venue, it tends not to change that much. So like if I'm doing outdoor theater, I'm going to focus a little bit more on strengthening my voice and working on that, just because, especially the space that we work with Uncovered, it's gorgeous,
Mm.
but it's set, kind of in the woods. We've got that beautiful river right there. So you are fighting with nature a little bit. And with any outdoor venue, I've worked with Shakespeare Royal Oak, which is a lovely company too, in Star JC Park. And it's the same concept of, you sort of have the elements that you're trying to speak over, and you're trying to do that for several shows a week safely. In my case, I also have allergies, so a lot of times it is like popping a Benadryl and then hydrating
Yeah,
so
drinking
that
a
I'm
ton of
not
water.
dried out
Yeah.
before I have to go out there and perform. So depending on the venue, I put sometimes more emphasis on safe vocal work, just depending on how demanding that part of it is. But for the most part, it stays the same. Of, I like to obviously sit down and read the script, but I'll read it over a few times looking for different things. So the first time is just sort of my preliminary reading of what the story is. And then I read it again with a focus of really paying attention to what my character is doing, what others are saying about the character. And that sort of starts giving me an idea of a characterization to build off of, starting with the text. Um, I'll go through a few times for that. But then a lot of my work really does come from being in the room. I do all of the text work and all of the memorization and stuff by myself at home, because of course, you want to get that script out of your hand as fast as you can. But for me, really most of the work comes from those, from playing off of your fellow actors, and from those amazing discussions that always end up happening in rehearsals. I'm sure you've been part of them too, where everybody is just like, we're gonna sit down and talk about the scene for a second and get everybody on the same page for the background, or for how everybody's feeling and things like that. And hearing other people's ideas of your character or the circumstances, and like I said, reacting off of what somebody gave you, or seeing their reaction to the way you said things, goes a long way for me for the build up for that, which, like we said before, plays into the idea of, I want it to be ready like as soon as I start. I always go into it and I tell myself not to, and I always start out being like, but I just want to be show ready, like first
Yeah.
rehearsal. I want it to be perfect.
Yeah.
And I know that's not going to happen. And it's not how it works. And,
No.
it, of course, it evolves. It's a living, breathing thing. The play exists up here in everybody's mind, and we all have to come together and make this living, breathing entity together. So you can't do it all by yourself, even though I would like to be perfect on day one. But,
I think we all do in some ways too, because there's this notion, and I know you have had to have this experience. I feel like all actors at one point in their career have this experience of, you show up for a rehearsal in which you've booked, a show in which you've booked, and you get there, and everybody is everyone is there because of their own merit. Everyone is there because of their own talent, their own skills. They booked the job, so they beat out all these other people that audition. But you still get to that first rehearsal, and you're still like, oh my gosh, I have to prove myself. I have to prove that I'm like,
yes.
I'm professional enough. I have to prove that I'm just as good as these people in the room. I have to, and
Yep.
oftentimes it's like you said, you have those conversations that break the ice, and that like get everybody in the same playing field. Like, we're all humans. We're all trying to do this job together. We all want to have a good time, and so I think that's part of it too, is like you get there and you're like, am I good enough to do this?
Yeah. Like imposter syndrome always kicks in, where I'm like, okay, everybody else is here because they're a great actor. I snuck in on accident. They like forgot and cast me last minute because they needed. And it's like, why do I do that to myself? I know that I should have that confidence, but it still always creeps in where I'm like, everyone's so good and I'm going to be the weak link in this cast, and they're all going to know this was a mistake.
Yeah. I was floored, honestly. So I'm working on a project right now in New York, and obviously it's postponed until the theaters open back up. Yeah. But we had a Zoom rehearsal, and the director, I had never, in all of my work and professional career and everything, I had never come across woodshedding. And it's apparently a type of like directing where they specifically ask not to come in memorized. Come in familiar with the story, familiar with like your ideas of the character, but do not come in memorized. And the idea is that you run small sections of the script like very small sections of the script over and over and over again, that same section, until things start to come out of you organically and naturally. And I'm like, where's this been all my life? I love this. And so it was like, that was weird to me when she's like, I want you to come in and memorize. I'm like, no, but I have to show up memorize. I'm
Right.
professional, you know, because we go to school and like everyone's like, that's the first thing you do. And so
Yeah.
it was interesting. And that, like, I think that goes back to what you were saying, you know, earlier, of like, do whatever you can do. And if someone's asking you to do something, do the best that you can do, you know?
Yeah. And I think that exposure to new things like that is so helpful, because it is really easy for us to fall into a rut with your artistic process and with, you know, the way that things are supposed to be done, right? Like you said, we all know we're supposed to come in memorized and things like that. So sometimes having that director that shakes it up and makes you do things a little bit differently is really uncomfortable, but really exciting, and it brings out stuff in you, if you let it, that you wouldn't have been able to access before. But I do think it is really easy. I know I used to have a problem with this when I was younger, is I would like be so stubborn and be like, but this isn't, but I already had in my head how I was going to do it, and I don't want to, you know, change it. And it's having to make yourself, you know, see that you're not always right, and the way that you do things isn't the only way of doing things, and that trying something different or making yourself uncomfortable isn't something to resist always. I think we all sort of have that natural instinct to not want to be uncomfortable and to not want to do things different, because, well, I didn't come up with it, so it probably won't work. And, you know, what if I embarrass myself by doing a new thing? And so we get kind of resistant. But I think it's beautiful when we let ourselves be made uncomfortable and let things be shaken up and have to try things in a different way. Like you said, now you know that process is actually something you really like. And to me, that sounds awful, but maybe I would really like it too. You know, like maybe it's something I need to do, because my first instinct is like, I don't want to do that.
Right. Well, no, and it's so crazy. I'm so excited that we started talking about this, because it makes me think of two really important things that have like entered my world in the last year that I want the listeners to know about. And I'm sure that you would benefit from it too, is the idea of uncomfortableness. I don't know if you've heard of the Duplass brothers. They are directors, and they have, if the listeners want to find out more, Google them and then go on YouTube and look up their short film called This Is John. It's incredible. And a book called How to Unfuck Yourself. And in both, they talk about how the Duplass brothers specifically with directing is like, when they start their projects with actors, they will go to the actors and say, the type of directing that we do is based on how uncomfortable we can get the scene. And they basically want to see how much uncomfortableness happens, because that's where the realness happens. And so they warn the actors at the beginning of the process, like, this is what we go for, this is what we're wanting. We want it to be safe, but we also understand like that this is not for everybody. And I thought that was so interesting. And they talk about some of their other movies and projects where that is the case. And so they'll sit on a scene with two actors and just not stop filming, and like find that, like, where, you know, because in the uncomfortableness, our brains, like you said, our brains are trained to get the polish, get the perfect, get like, we want everything like hunky-dory, because that's safe, that's comfortable in our like anthropological brain. But the idea that uncomfortableness happens on stage is like the most real you can get, and that's what the audience wants to see, is like you being real, living on stage. So I highly recommend those things, so look them up. They have changed my life in a lot of ways. But I guess my next question for you would be, we've talked so much about theater and acting and processes and everything. Given the current state of the world right now, and in a lot of facets, what are your genuine thoughts on the future of theater, the future of live performance? Give it to me straight.
So I mean, it's terrifying right now to be a performer, to work in the live entertainment industry in any capacity, from actor, director, you know, lighting, front of house. Every role is affected by it. There's so many people out of work and unsure of what is going to happen right now, which is a really wild place to be, especially for people working in an industry that is as old as theater. For all of us to find ourselves in this moment of asking, you know, is it going to come back? When is it going to come back? What is it going to look like? And for me, I think it will probably take a while, because I think, you know, health and safety precautions aside, which is going to be quite a while before we can really figure out an effective way for audiences and everybody involved with putting on the show to be safe.
For sure.
With, you know, the pandemic going on, I think that that's going to probably be a while. But I also think that people are going to be nervous about being in large crowds for a while, even after, you know, everything is taken care of. I just think that that will be the reality, that people will be nervous. And I also think, unfortunately, we work in a profession that people don't think is essential until they realize that it's essential. I think unfortunately we probably will stay dipped down for quite a while, and I don't think it will die out, but I think it will not be a priority for a while. I think people will think it's non-essential, which is understandable. I mean, depending on where you go, like Broadway tickets are very expensive. And right. I get that, you know, if you have disposable income set aside for a date, your first instinct isn't go to the live theater in any city that you're in.
Right.
But I think that people will, as time goes on, will miss it, will realize how essential live events, and especially theater, are. You know, it's been around for thousands of years for a reason. We have modern technology, and we still do live theater. Like, we just, as a species, love it and love seeing stories told live, and we love being a part of that and feeling that camaraderie. Like I said, a play does become a living, breathing thing, and the audience becomes part of it. And I think everybody wants that sense of belonging, and we all want to feel connected to the arts and to each other and to these stories. And so I don't think it will go away for good, but I do think that, unfortunately, because people have always had it, and because artists, and especially theater artists, are very used to giving away our labor for nothing or almost nothing, that I don't think people, some do, but I think most people don't really think about it, because they don't have to, because we give it, because, like we were talking about being so emotional, we want to make, and we want to give, and we want to show it to people, and we want you to have it, and we want you to love it like we do. And we're so willing to give that I don't think people will miss it until it's gone, or it feels like it's gone. Mm-hmm. But then I think that we will begin to bounce back. The timeline of when, though, is anybody's game. I don't know. I hope soon, obviously, but I unfortunately, as time goes on, I do think it will be a while, and I do think that we will be hit very hard, and for probably longer than many other industries, just because, like I said, they won't think it's essential until they realize it's essential.
I completely agree, and it's so crazy to me that is so true, and I believe everything you say with 100% accuracy, because even though people are seeing the value in art right now, because for the last couple of months, everyone being locked up in their homes, and their only availability is to see the expressions and the stories and music and all these things that are only available to them on their computer, or on their phones, or with their own families, or the power of art and its healing properties, its calming properties, its just relatability. It's powerful. And I do believe that, unfortunately, I still think that people are going to not take its full value, you know, until the dust is settled. Mm-hmm. And you said something really beautiful too, which I also relate to, is like, it is innately in us. You know, artists, we have these emotions, we have this vulnerability and this connection to give, this, you know, that's inside us, to be of service to our community, to be of mm-hmm. service to people that may relate to our stories, or may relate to a story that we are moved by. And it's a perfect transition into my next question for you, is because of that desire and that beauty that's inside of us as artists, that we want to give that to other people. I think that you know, our influences and what the world around us clues us into our drive and our need to create and our need to write certain stories or to perform certain stories. And for me as a writer and a performer, I have found that my voice for activism and for LGBTQ community and for marginalized communities and immigrants and all these wrongs that are happening in the world have clued me into how I make my art, how I write. And you inspire me so much because you are such a powerful activist. You've done so many things on Instagram and on your feed, and you just have a really strong voice. And sometimes I was just telling my wife Katie this the other day, is like, I'll read some of your stuff and you just have such an ability and a confidence to just be like, this is how it is, deal with it. And it's a beautiful thing because we were just talking about this, and I think what is happening right now in the world is so powerful, so necessary, but I do feel like there's so much sadness in it because there is this idea that, like, I am so happy that we are here and that we are not, like, that I can be a part of this change and I can be a part of a movement that, like, holds everybody up to an accountability of, like, this is real, this is happening, it's a wrong, and we need to stand up and we need to do something about it. But then I also struggle so much because I feel like there's sadness in that because it's happening now. Why didn't it happen so long ago? And so I just have to know that I want to live my life knowing the things that I've done wrong in my life and knowing the things that I can do differently to make a better change and make a difference. And I say all that because I wonder, for you, being an artist, being an activist, being a mother, having so many powerful titles and powerful identities as part of you, how has that affected you in this current climate? How has that affected how you want to perform and write? And how has that affected in what you want to speak up and speak out for? Lots of things.
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for your kind words. I sort of struggle with calling myself an activist, even though, I mean, which is not to say that I don't want to, but I just feel like there are so many people that are really out there in the trenches, like, doing amazing work for the world at large, and for, you know, the Michigan theater community, and for the city of Detroit and the state of Michigan, for addressing, like we were talking about, you know, the inherent systems of racism that we all operate under, and, you know, sexism and homophobia and all of that. There's so many people that are really out there doing amazing things. Like, I know Black Queens on Stage around here with Ashley Lyle and Dan Johnson. They are, you know, really sort of taking the Michigan theater scene to task in a way that it needs to, and are making people sit down with that discomfort of, yes, you know, it's very easy as artists for all of us to think we're very open-minded and open-hearted, and we're all, you know, we love everybody and we don't judge and we take everyone, but we still all need to sit down and look at where we failed, and look at
100%.
what we have done and what we have not done, you know, what we have said and what we have not said. Where have we actively been a part of it, and where have we passively been a part of it? And really having to look at it with a critical eye, I think is so important. And so, like I said, I try to be involved. I want to be involved because I have a voice and I know that I need to be using it, but I think I still struggle with feeling like it's not enough. And with finding the balance of, you know, I have a home and a family and a child to take care of, but I also want to be out in these streets, like, you know, giving it to racists every single day. And I think a lot of people have those different things to balance. And so I think for all of us, it is time that we sit down with ourselves and, like you said, look critically at the mistakes that we've made and forgive ourselves for it and hold ourselves accountable for it, and not try to hide from it or pretend like it didn't happen, but know that it is our starting point. You know, we've all done shitty things in our lives. Can I swear? Sorry.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, please do.
We've all done, you know, shitty things in our lives, and we have to make peace with that and not punish ourselves for it forever, but
Yes.
also not hide from it. And so all of it is a balancing game, right? It's looking at what you've done, but not beating yourself up forever, and not letting it be an excuse as to why you shouldn't be involved. I think that that's really easy for a lot of people, especially people that have really great intentions, but maybe are realizing now or have realized in the past that they've screwed up in some way, or they've been complicit, or whatever. It's really easy to tell yourself, I'm not enough this or too much that, so I should just stay out of it. And so that's something that I work with myself on, even though I don't feel ever like I'm doing enough, is reminding myself, but I'm still doing something, and something is better than nothing. And
Absolutely.
anything worth doing is worth doing only part way, if only part way is all you can do right now. If
Yes.
today I can only do this little bit, then I'll do this little bit, and not use the fact that I can't do everything as an excuse to do nothing.
Yes.
And so I think all of that is really important for us moving forward. And I think I does give me hope, the conversations being had now. I think more and more people are realizing the way things have been. I think more people are realizing the way things have been for people that they love, that they've just never paid attention to. I think people are realizing there are whole worlds outside of their own world. I think really sad but important conversations are happening, like you said, about why it's taken this long, why it's 2020, and there's so many issues that have been issues for a long time that people have been talking about. Like, a lot of these issues, it feels like it just popped up this year, but if you look into, I mean,
Oh yeah.
it's been written about, like, it's been covered. Like,
In music and songs and
yeah,
play, all sorts of stuff.
there are tons and tons of brilliant people, tons of brilliant activists, tons of brilliant Black people and queer people, and women that have written books on books on books about this, that have been trying to tell us. And so I'm glad that we're all joining the party late, because it's better than never. But we do all need to stop and go, why did it take me this long?
Yeah.
And a lot of times the answer is because it was comfortable, because it's uncomfortable to sit and look at what we've done wrong. It's uncomfortable to look
Yeah.
at people we love and go, they are doing some ugly stuff. It's uncomfortable to have those conversations with people, and to, as uncomfortable as it is to educate and correct your own self, it's a million times more difficult to have those conversations with other people.
Yeah.
And it's hard to find the balance of not attacking but still wanting to educate. When do you rock the table? When is it not worth it if somebody doesn't want to learn? All of it is really, it's really difficult. It's really heavy, intense, lifelong work. And so it can get very exhausting to
Yeah.
even think about doing any of it. But I think that's the biggest thing that I hope that people realize, is that something is better than nothing. I think it was Maya Angelou that said, do the best you can until you know better. And when you know better, do better.
Yes.
And that's all it is. That's all anybody's asking is, as you learn things, and as it is feasible for you to actually do things, do better. You don't have to be, and you probably never will be, a perfect person or a perfect activist, or free completely of all racism and homophobia and everything, because all of that stuff, it's deep, it's internalized, it's
Yeah.
deep shit that we have drilled into us.
Mm-hmm.
And so sitting with the fact that it's going to be lifelong work, and you're going to make mistakes, and it's going to not really be that fun, but it's necessary to make the world better now and later, to make it better for our kids, but also to make it better for our neighbor down the street that always waves to us as we go by, for every person you see. And I think if people really look within themselves, they do want that. We are pack animals. We are a community based species. I mean, look how hard the pandemic and this isolation and not being able to be together has been on people.
Yeah.
We want to connect. We want to feel a part of the group. We want to feel seen. We want to feel validated. And I think that the more and more people do the work inside themselves and look at the people around them, and ask, how can we collectively improve, I think we'll begin to move forward. And I think a lot of those conversations have been happening right now, which gives me hope for the country at large. And for, like we were talking about, the theater scene, I think this is a great time, since we all are sort of down for the count. It's a great time for everybody in the industry to look at these lessons and absorb them and start making plans for how we move forward, how we have more diverse members of our boards, how we have, where we find new plays written by people whose stories need to be told and let them tell their own stories, how we make audiences have to see both the similarities they have with people that they never thought they had similarities with, and how they have similarities with people they maybe wish they didn't have similarities with. Because I think that that's a huge problem for us too, is we all want to feel like the good guy, right? None of us want to,
nobody wants to be an asshole.
Right, yeah, none of us want to be the asshole. But sometimes you're the asshole.
Yeah.
Like, it's, somebody's got to be in every story, and sometimes it's you.
Yeah.
And we have to just make peace with that and move forward and try not to be the asshole next time.
Yeah. Well, no, I think that's perfect, because you were saying like how this is so powerful, and thank you so much. Like, all I kept thinking in my head as you were saying all those beautiful words is like, Hannah for president.
I don't know if any of it made sense. I realized halfway through, I was like, I've been talking for so long. I hope all of this is like real words.
It was brilliant, and it was so good, because I could tell not only was it from your personal perspective as, someone who has experienced a lot of these things and who stands up for these things, but also like, you're right. Like, we all, me included, like you said it so well, because we all want to be the good guy. We all want to be the good guy. We want to be, and so what I think that happens is it bleeds into us wanting to be, not only be the good guy, but we want to be right. So instead of like, I'm not racist, I'm not this. Well, I hate to break it to you, and I'll be the first one to admit it, as somebody who thrives to be a good, kind, loving person, I have racism inside me that was inherent, that, and you said it too, like, it's ingrained in us because we absorb it from the time that we are little babies. After we are born, we are absorbing it. We are absorbing misogyny and homophobia and all these things. And as adults, that's when we start to realize, oh, I have autonomy. I can make my own choices. I can figure these things out. And that's still scary, because then you're like, oh, I have this whole life that my brain has like learned how to like survive and be okay with, and now I have to like make these scary, hard choices that make me uncomfortable.
Yes, exactly. And I think that is what it is for so many people, is it's the foundations that our worlds have been built on, and to have that shaken, or to have to look at that and go, that was all a complete lie, or it wasn't what I thought it was, or I built my whole life on, these ideas that it turns out are bad or are harmful to other people. It's terrifying. Like, I get why it is so much for people that sometimes the first instinct is to reject it outright and to just not want to listen, because it's terrifying.
Yeah.
And my hope for people that do reject it outright is that down the line they're willing to look at it a different way, because we all make those mistakes. We all have those knee-jerk reactions. We all immediately reject things just because they're scary or uncomfortable. But hopefully, once we are able to sit with it a little bit in, our own time, we can look at things and move on. And so I try very hard not to write off anybody that is clinging to old or awful ideas, or who doesn't want to learn. And I try to tell myself, maybe I'm not the one that gets through to them, but maybe this is a seed that, with other people watering it, with more time, with more experiences with different people, maybe it'll germinate, and I'll never see it, but maybe it'll get there.
Yeah.
Which is a struggle, because it's very easy when somebody is popping off to just, tell them where to go and all of that. And I have done it. I am guilty of, there are many people who have heard my thoughts and feelings on how they are as people. but that's not always the most productive way to get things done.
Right.
And so I try to, even those people that I'm like, I'm not gonna be the one anymore, but I still try to hope for them that maybe somebody down the line will be the one that will get
Yeah.
through to you, but it's not gonna be my ass because I'm
Yeah.
not doing this anymore.
Well, it's so funny, and for everyone listening, I have to read this up really quick. We won't spend much time because we don't have much time left. But I do remember that when everything first happened with Ahmaud Arbery and like that open letter that I wrote, you had such good thoughts on it, and I have such, and this maybe is for a whole nother episode, but I have such mixed feelings about social media, as both of it as an artist and just in my personal life and how it affects how I create and all those things.
Yeah.
So there's that. But I felt like at that time and place, and like you said, like you just take it every day and you ask yourself and you challenge yourself and you do these things. And on that day, I just felt like I needed to say this thing. And we sure enough had this guy come at us. And I am not the type of person that usually does that, but I didn't want, I felt like I was so on fire for your community and for anybody that was starting to like change their mind around these ideas that I was like, nope, I'm blocking him. I'm not even gonna like, I'm not even going to like mess with this because I just didn't feel like giving him that. And so I respect that on some level, because when you decide that, you know your own limitations, you know, like,
Yes.
this is not going to end well if I spend time on this. It's for somebody else. It's above me. It's for somebody else.
It is knowing what is good for you, what's good for your sanity. And there's also just some people that, you know, you're like, you don't want to learn today, or you don't want to learn from me, or you're just determined to aggravate. Sometimes people are in having a bad day, they're in a bad place, they just want to fight because they're hurting on the inside, and you picking the fight and engaging with that isn't going to do anything really to help. But I get it. It's still worth putting those things out there. It's still worth using the voice you have, even knowing that somebody might get into it with me. I might have to end up just leaving it be, but at least I said what I said.
No,
I think it's important for all of us to just keep speaking out. And I very much did appreciate that you spoke out and you were on it.
I just, there's very few things I have, and I was just having one of those days where it was not about me. It was not about, it was the realization that was happening. And for someone to even, make space for the other side when in those situations, it's about, just being consoling the community, and like in these times where there's like just atrocious wrongs, and it's like for someone to step in there and say, well, what about them? Like, no, we're not going to mess with that today. Today's about,
there are times to see someone's point of view and to understand where they're coming from, and to understand, even if what they're saying is wrong, to understand the nuances of it, or of what they're getting at. And then there's times to just go, this idea, or the way you're coming at us with this hateful idea, is so wrong and is so dangerous to be given a platform, that you do have to just say, no, we're not getting into it. This isn't a matter of opinion. This isn't a matter of debate. We're not debating things like whether or not somebody deserved to get murdered. That's not a debate that we're having.
No.
But I really did appreciate you, like I said, speaking out, because I know, especially at that time with the Ahmaud Arbery case, it was, really before the second civil rights movement kicked off. And so I think it was very easy for a lot of people, especially when cases like that unfortunately happen all the time.
Right.
It's very easy to not say anything, or to feel like, it's not your place to say anything, like we were talking about earlier. And I'm sure you, as a white man, have felt that in, the balance of speaking out against injustices, but not straying out of your lane. I feel it too. I mean, I am Black, but I'm mixed. I'm very light-skinned. People don't automatically look at me and know that I'm Black. So there's some navigating of that, of how much is my place to speak because I'm part of the community, but I don't want to speak over the experiences of, people within the
Yeah.
community that don't look like me and haven't been afforded the privileges of not automatically being Black or being light skinned, and the privileges that come with that. Like it is that balance of doing your part and finding your voice and where you fit into the community without ever speaking over the people whose story it really is to tell.
I love that. Can you say that one more time? I love that idea. The idea of like not speaking over, because I want people to hear that. It's so powerful.
Yeah, it is our job to use your voice to speak up, but do not speak over the people whose story it is to tell. You want
Yes.
to uplift those voices. You don't want to crowd them out.
Exactly. And that I think that's such a gift for me too, to know that, because that will help me moving forward too, because you're right, as a white man I struggle because I do want to be a kind of loving person. I want to create safe spaces, I want to do these things, but I also know as a white man I have little to no um like understanding and experiences of the Black community. And so all I can do is be a voice and try to like help, but I never want to speak first and foremost, I never ever want to speak um, with an idea that I have like ever understood that, because I haven't. But then I also never want to take up space for someone who has that experience, because my very goal is to lift them up, is to give them
Yeah.
space in this world. And I think that's a big thing of what I think a lot of people don't understand too, is the Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter and things of that nature, where it's like I feel like I just want to give someone in the Black community and anybody in a marginalized community space, because that's the whole idea, is that they don't have the same space as, you know.
Yeah, they've been kept out of or edged out of so many spaces that, yeah, this really is our time for all of us, but especially those of us that have a great deal of privilege to move aside where we need to, and to within our own spheres use our voices to amplify the voices of the marginalized, of those who, like I said, have been knowing about this, have been writing about it, have been trying to get us on the same page. And it's like, I don't have anything, really new to bring to the conversation.
Right.
These brilliant people have covered it. It's just my job to direct attention to the work that's being done.
Yes.
And so on that note, like I said, check out Black Queens on Stage and check out Detroit Will Breathe. Those are two great organizations that are doing amazing things in Southeast Michigan. Black Queens on Stage for the theater community specifically, and then Detroit Will Breathe. They're out there, protesting and working to protect people from police brutality and the various racist systems that we all operate under.
Yeah, and I'll make sure to get those, and I'll put them in the link for the video. And then also, I always put in the last few videos I've been doing this. I always put in the Black Lives Matter website link, because they have reformatted the website where it's like a one-stop all. You can find out all the protests that are happening in your area. You can sign all the petitions that are happening, justice for Breonna Taylor, all these things, which are super important. And if you're somebody who doesn't know where to get started, or you're having, like overwhelming feelings of like, where do I go? What do I do? Go there as a starting point, and it'll be like great. And then I just love you so much. And I have one last question before I let you go. I always ask everybody that comes on the show this. So in the last few years, I've really discovered the importance of yoga and meditation and just self-reflection and the idea of self-improvement. And I wonder, when I do yoga, or when I go on a long run or go on a workout, I oftentimes find that time in that workout, whether it's at the end or during a quiet long run, to think of my gratitude, to think of my love and light in my life. I really do think that it helps my life. And I think that it changes your perspective during the day if you focus on a little bit of gratitude. So I'd love to ask people this, and I'm going to ask you, what is love and light in your life right now?
The biggest love and light in my life, of course, is my beautiful and hilarious and wild feral daughter, Daphne. And she's definitely the thing that, even on the ugliest, worst days where I'm, my depression is feeling really bad, or it's just really hard to see the end of the tunnel with, the pandemic and with our industry and financial worries and all of that, she is always the thing that brightens up every day. Like no day can be all bad all the way through with her there, and getting to see her little smile or the silly things that she does, a new thing that she's learned, goes a long way for making the day better, and for also reminding me that, she is at this age really only capable of focusing on what's good about a situation. She'll be mad, for a few seconds because she's a toddler and so the tantrums happen. But, she looks at the pandemic and we're home because we're off from work, and she just sees that mom and dad are home all the time.
I get mom and dad all to myself.
It's really hot outside and we want to complain about the heat, and she goes, I get to run around outside and play. And, so she's a great reminder of where to look for those moments of joy and those pockets of joy in life.
I love it. You are the best. Thank you so much. This has been such a gift for me. We haven't seen each other in so long, so it's so good seeing your face. And I'm so grateful for all the powerful and wise words you shared with me. For anybody who wants to follow you on Instagram, do you know your Instagram tag? If not, I can put it in the link.
I do, but you could also link it. But it is Hannah, HANNAH _niece, NIECE.
I love it. Yeah. I follow Hannah, obviously, and she's great. She has the most wonderful posts. And again, we talk so much about activism and what you can do. And I think you are always posting so many inspirational things and informative things as well. So follow Hannah. She's great. And yeah, just be safe and tell Daphne I said hello, tell Eric I said hello, and
well, we miss you. We will have a double Zoom date soon with you and Katie.
Yes. Well, thank you again. I love you. Bye.
I love you. Bye.